Whakataka ki te uru, whakataka ki te tonga, kia mā, kina, ki uta, kia mā, tara, ki tai, e haki ana, ti akura, he tio, he huka, he houhanga, ti hei, Māori ora.
We've got no apologies for today's session. There is a further declaration of interest made by Cole relating to some submitters that are being represented today. And just wanted to clear that we'll be having those items through our register, and the way we'll manage this is Cole will get the table for those submissions, and we'll not be involved in deliberation about those matters. I need to talk to Fiona Ashton when she arrives. Fiona, so you're presenting an overview of all these submitters together, aren't you? Is that the understanding, or are you going to go one by one?
Prepared submissions one by one.
Okay.
There is some commonality.
So yes.
So I won't label as we go through.
Okay.
Common features, in particular
common.
Sort of, and then sort.
Yes.
And I've done summary statements other than Miles.
Yes.
And was where I did put it.
Okay. Okay.
Summaries I sent to you last night.
Yeah.
You should have those, but I've also got hard copies.
Fiona, I think from a process point of view, we're best for Nicole to step back for your whole presentation, given that there's commonalities between them, and it's just keeping us safe from any conflict of interest issues. So we'll Nicole will step back for your presentation on behalf of your clients. Thank you. Help me here, Kathy. We're moving to staff reports. So we're underway. We can get going, I think. Welcome, Fiona. Come to the table and we'll get underway nice and early.
Sorry, just getting organised. So,
Just take your time, Fiona. We're ahead of schedule, so just when you're ready.
I'm just getting the submissions back up on my computer.
Great.
I've got everything. Just taking a while to upload. Oh yeah, I have to put up the application plan. Right, sorry about that. I'm all ready to go. So I'll just quickly whiz through my summary statement. I'll be quick because there was a few pages. So reading at paragraph 4, Red Spur is developing the Redmond Spur subdivision, which is located on the lower Port Hills at Horswell and adjoining Horswell Quarry Park. And there is a location or a plan of the site. So the sort of buff colour is the zoned, no, sorry, wait a moment. The green is the, oh no, I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I agree. The buff colour.
Yeah, the buff colour is the zoned area, surrounded to the south by rural Port Hill zone, and the yellow is the proposed extension to connect with Upper Kennedy's Bush, which is an existing subdivision adjoining to the west.
Yeah, when you say buff, do you mean the beigey lighter?
Yes, I do.
Colour?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Not the more orangey colour.
No,
Okay.
no.
It's in the valley. It's urban fringe.
Thank you. So
Yeah, so it's
So
the
that-
buff colour.
okay.
Yep. So the associated company has also developed Quarry Hill, which is the Upper Kennedy's Bush existing subdivision of around 100 sections. Both the two subdivisions are separated by a band of rural hills, a rural Port Hill zoning. Also owned by associated interests and part of a larger balanced rural PH zone area totaling about 250 hectares. Red Spur is owned and being developed by family members who've owned and farmed the land for several generations. Their vision is to create a high amenity mixed density legacy subdivision, which takes its design cue from the neighbouring well-established high amenity Cashmere Hills area. Red Spur has identified a roading link between the Redmond Spur and Upper Kennedy's Bush subdivisions. The link is highly beneficial, if not essential, to ensure appropriate emergency access is available, including for extreme events such as future earthquakes, and to achieve best practice urban design principles of connectivity and integration. Any road link will require crossing land which is on the edge of, but within area identified in the Christchurch District Plan as Port Hill's outstanding natural landscape. The district plan policy enables subdivision and development in appropriate circumstances in the outstanding natural landscape. And I've set out the policy below. Creating a link will require some additional residential zoning adjoining the road alignment to make the proposal financially viable. And so that policy is to avoid use and development that breaks the skyline, including the crater rim ridge lines on the peninsula and the radial spurs of the Port Hills. So what I'm saying, it's not a complete no-no. Appropriate subdivision is appropriate. And also avoiding areas where there's little capacity to absorb change. Going on, paragraph 7, as more detailed surveying and engineering investigations have been undertaken of the residential zoned land on the mid and upper slopes, it's become apparent that some minor zone boundary shifts are required to remove some land not suitable for urban development, to be replaced with similar sized areas currently zoned rural Port Hills, but well suited to residential development. Red Spur is concerned to ensure that the spatial plan and subsequent RPS review does not become a straitjacket, which restricts or worse still precludes such meritorious planning proposals from consideration through future planning processes, such as a private plan change, resource consent, or future district plan review. This is likely to be the case if the draft spatial plan is not amended to provide some flexibility in this regard. Maps 2 and 4 only show the existing urban areas and rezoned areas approved by way of private plan change processes. There's no provision for greenfield development outside these areas. The above appears to be the case because the spatial plan adopts a compact city form growth model, which almost, if not entirely, concentrates future growth at medium and high densities along public transport routes, and I should say within existing zoned greenfield areas. The desire for a viable mass rapid transit system appears to be driving the form of urban growth rather than the other way around. This is particularly concerning giving the high level of uncertainty regarding whether these projects will proceed, in particular MRT, what the take-up of a PT will be, how long it will take for the high-density residential required to support the MRT business case to eventuate. The approach cannot be justified on greenhouse gas reduction grounds, as there's only a minimal 5% difference in emission reductions between the 3 urban growth scenarios that were assessed, and that's compact, consolidated and dispersed. And as I note, by 2050, the Insight Economic Review report of the spatial plan, which I have read, was prepared for Infinity Group, quotes figures that project that by 2050, 80% of vehicle kilometres travelled will be by hybrid and electric vehicles.
Yep,
that's 80%.
You finish that sentence and I'll ask you a question, so sorry.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah. Where your previous sentence, where is that quote taken from?
Absolutely.
What's the source?
No, it is in the full submission and it's taken from one of the background documents.
Okay.
So the reference is in the full submission.
Reference, great, thank you.
Yeah. I do not support the compact city approach. It's highly likely to result in scarcity, greater potential for monopolistic practices, and continued escalation in land and house prices, which has occurred in recent times. A mix of a consolidation and dispersed growth approach is, in my opinion, far more appropriate and realistic. Essentially, this is because the compact city approach doesn't recognise that the existing concentric urban form of the city is already, as the Insight report describes it, baked in. The National Policy Statement for Urban Development does make provision for urban development, unanticipated by planning documents, i.e. outside the map 2 and 4 existing and future urban areas, where this contributes to significant development and a well-functioning urban environment. I'm quoting their Policy 8. Meritorious smaller scale proposals may not be able to meet the first criteria depending on how significant development capacity is assessed. The proposal to connect the Upper Kennedy's Bush and Redspur subdivision will improve their connectivity and the potential catchment for a future extension of local bus services, which currently do not directly service this area. Currently, the closest PT bus services are at Lower Kennedy's Bush, Glover Road in Horswell and Westmoreland. Over time, all facets of a well-functioning environment can be met. The proposal will enable a variety of homes that meet the needs in terms of type, price and location of different households. And this includes a greater mix of house and section sizes than is typical for most hill suburbs, smaller, more affordable townhouses and potentially apartments, as well as some larger sites. And that's particularly provided for under the mixed density overlay that applies to this land. It will enable residential development, which is close to neighbouring community and commercial services at Horswell, and which will enhance the accessibility and connectivity of the existing Redmond Spur and Kennedy's Bush subdivisions. To support a competitive land and development market by providing an ongoing greenfield residential development opportunity for a well-established local landowner and developer. Contribute to greenhouse gas emissions in comparison to more distant, less well-connected location, and by consolidating residential development around existing suburbs. And it won't be subject to natural hazard risks, which affect many other parts of the city and will become more significant over time due to climate change, such as areas affected by sea level rise and flooding. So a number of amendments are sought to the spatial plan, and I've set them out in Appendix A, to ensure that meritorious proposals such as this are not precluded by future consideration through other planning processes, and to meet the requirements of the future development strategy, a future development strategy under the NPSUD. This includes enabling consideration of suitable greenfield growth to meet the housing needs of Greater Christchurch over the next 30 years, including the Redspur expansion and other minor boundary changes as outlined above. And principally, these are amend 3.1 to consider effects of development rather than protect areas with significant natural values to be consistent with the district plan policy framework. In terms of maps 2 and 14, correctly identify the Redspur existing urban area, and that's referred to in the original submission, where it's not quite right, and add to the legend to make provision for new or expanded residential and business development outside the existing urban area and approved plan change areas shown on the maps in appropriate circumstances. And if I take you to the appendix, the first page in the middle, I'll just read you that wording because that is quite important. So middle of the page, new expanded residential and business areas outside the existing urban area and approved and operative plan change areas shall add significant additional development capacity and contribute to a well-functioning urban environment, or contribute towards meeting a shortfall in at least sufficient development capacity at a sub-territorial level, or be relatively small scale, not compromise the overall spatial plan urban growth management approach, and contribute to a consolidated urban form. And that amendment, in my view, gives you the essential flexibility to be able to respond to suitable proposals which otherwise just may not see the light of day because of the way the current draft spatial plan is worded. So number 3, housing capacity assessments, recognised in table 2. That's the table which sets out the figures for housing capacity for the period to 2050, and it only looks at the districts as each district as a whole. So recognised doesn't identify housing needs at the sub-district level as required by the NPSUD, and that housing capacity assessments are likely to change over time, particularly due to sensitivity to assumptions such as feasibility of development. And clarify that the draft spatial plan criteria for broad locations for residential development only apply to residential intensification within existing urban areas beyond the mandatory medium density residential standards. And I'll just take you to that change because that's also one that that's the bottom of the second page of the amendments, where there's the comment that identifying broad locations for residential development should be guided by the spatial strategy, blah, blah, blah. And the first criteria, at the top of the next page, is adjoins to or is within a significant urban centre, major town, or a locally important urban centre, and is accessible by public transport routes. Those provisions are unduly restrictive for greenfield and aren't necessary, clearly shouldn't apply to greenfield because there's another set of criteria further on in the spatial plan which specifically refer to greenfield. So that's for clarification, important clarification purposes. And then the last one is to amend the criteria for future greenfield development to ensure consistent with the NPSUD. And they are set out on the last page of the appendix. And essentially, again, the amendments accommodate smaller scale proposals which aren't of a scale which impacts the overall growth strategy, and also ones which add significant urban development capacity.
Yeah, speed presentation, which is good. Fiona, I'll lead the questions as a planner because you're raising quite a lot of planning sort of issues. Firstly, and noting we've got a little bit extra time because we started early, could this team take me through the Christchurch City map so I can identify exactly where this is on the city?
The map's now on your laptop, so you could identify it.
So we need a home in on where the site is under the plan. So
they can do that.
How do we know? Here we go. Just like to fly around Christchurch. Yes. We'll do that for a little minute. Yeah. Right, so here we go. Oh, here we go.
Yes,
there's a quarry. Yeah,
there's a quarry part. Is that right?
Yeah, it's where we are. You can see this.
So what's that road there? Oh, sorry, just.
This looks like Sutherland's Road where the arrow is now.
Yes.
Can we give a wee plus here?
So you can home in a bit more.
Zoom in a bit. We do that.
You go like that.
Here we go.
So
So-
can you, with your mouse, could you just
Do you wanna-
show
sorry,
me
do
where
you wanna
Red
put
Spur is?
it as well, so you can actually see.
On this layer here.
Yeah.
It's
So then you
much
can
better.
see that,
This is much better. We'll just move up a little bit. This here is, if I can speak
Yes,
to this, since
yes.
it's something I've been doing for a few years.
Yes.
This is Kitchener's Knoll Road here.
Yes,
This piece here is the current Redmond Spur stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and soon to be 6,
yes,
which surrounds this block of trees here.
yes,
Further over here is the Quarry Hill. We'll get rid of that. And the start of the Kennedy's Bush track. Some of you may have walked up there, which is at the top of Kennedy's Bush Road.
yes,
And where the arrow is, and just right where the arrow is now, is the Christchurch City Council Water Reservoir Sutherlands 2,
yes,
which is about 200 metres up Kennedy's Bush track from the current end of the urban development. And linking the start of the walking track around through this landform here and around this block of trees is the area.
okay,
In yellow on that other map. This point here is the high point at about 225 metres, and that's sometimes called Kitchener's Knoll. And if you walked up Kennedy's Bush track, it's where the sort of first high point is before it drops into a saddle, before it goes up again to the Summit Road.
okay.
And that's the main landscape feature in the area.
And that's a walking track, not a road that we can see there?
It is a paper road, and yes, it's not formed, and it's very well used as a walking, mountain bike, walking, or lately horse track.
Okay,
And it links Kennedy's Bush Road to the Summit Road.
so this is the area I've got. So thank you. My second question relates to how this area is mapped on map 5. So I wonder if we can bring up map 5, please, Josephine. And I just want to establish, either through yourselves or the officers, whether that area is covered. Let's go down, Josephine, by the orange key constraint area mapping.
My understanding is that, and the officers may be able to correct me, that includes areas of outstanding landscape. So the land between Kennedy's Bush and Upper Redmond Spur is identified as outstanding landscape in the district plan. So I think that would be included in the orange area. And what I'm saying is that the district plan doesn't preclude appropriate development in that area.
No, that's not really my question.
Oh, no, sorry. My
Yeah,
apologies.
okay. I'm just trying to identify, is the red spur land within the orange?
The existing zoned area isn't, no.
Okay, so what about the additional?
No, it is. My understanding is if that area, because it doesn't actually say what the protected areas are, but if it includes outstanding landscape, then it is.
Yeah, could we just home in on where that is? So
Zoom in a
we've
bit
got
more,
Hallsville
might
there. This doesn't correlate exactly. This isn't just
Okay.
Can we get
landscape
zoom
areas,
in?
this has been,
No,
this covers other.
Maybe you want to bring up map 10.
Map 10 is a better one, is that?
Map 10, yeah.
Well, they'll do it.
Oh, you,
Look, see, it's magic.
yes.
Look at that. That looks better. Zoom in on that one. So this will be the new stormwater. So it's somewhere up in here, but we'll just.
You've got the legend, that's the only thing.
If we can zoom in where the end of the L is on Hallsville, that we might get some. Hard to navigate your own city on a screen, isn't it? What's that bit there, do you think?
Is that the Hallsville Quarry?
Perhaps it is the Hallsville Quarry.
So I think these are the. This is,
Is that Hoonhay Valley?
yeah, so I think this is the here, which is,
Could be that
yeah.
then.
I think We think the hatched is outstanding landscape. I can't see the legend.
So below where it says Hallsville,
Yes.
directly down below that is another large green blob, for want of a better
Yes,
word.
yes.
And we think that is the Hallsville Quarry Park.
Yes.
And looking at the map to the right or east of that is those three tentacles of pincers of
Yes.
area which have that blue hatching. We think if that's the area, then that does whatever the blue hatching is, it is within that area.
Your land is within that area.
Correct.
Okay. And what about looking at map 8? Because this is the one we were talking about natural hazard risk. But the reason I'm doing this is we've asked the council officer team to look at the general issue about these are constraints maps. Are there existing zoned areas and opportunities that already allow development in some of these constraint areas? And we just want to get an understanding of how the mapping here works in relation to that.
Right.
So this is a map showing slope hazard in orange.
Slope hazard. I would say it'll be in that orange area.
Okay.
Because it's on a hill. So
Yes.
yeah, it'd be interesting to know what they mean by slope hazard.
Okay. So, and I just wanted to make sure how map 5, does map 5 include, and this is a question for the staff, does map 5 include the orange area in map 8? It's a cumulative constraints map. It's a little bit difficult.
I have to come back and confirm that, which,
Confirm that.
between map 7 and 8, which was carried forward to map 5.
Yes. 'Cause
Yeah,
map-
I was going to suggest that this is something that I think possibly we could confer with the officers and
Yes.
clarify with
Look,
you, because it's pretty difficult to just
Yes,
do it
yes.
on big
But
maps here,
it's
but
just-
we're happy to do that.
It's just that map 5 seems to have this cumulative constraints mapping, which
Yes.
is built up from a number of layers. The key issue for me is how that relates to future planning in terms of how map 5 might relate to future district plans, reviews, those sorts of things. And if your area is in or out, that is material to our thinking. So if that can be clarified, and we'll do that through the officers' question, just a clarification of that back to us when they report back to us.
Do we also need clarification of the status under the under map? Is it map 8 or map
I
10?
think all of the mapping, I'd like to see where this sits under the mapping. It's
Okay.
just this cumulative map 5, which used to be areas to protect and avoid. So initially we had a question about, well, if that includes existing zoned areas, what does that mean for planning going forward?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the question. We've asked a broad question about that earlier on, but if we could use this as an example to test the question. Thank you. Look, I do have 2 more questions for you specifically, Fiona. Your paragraph 12, third bullet point. Are you saying that table 2 is deficient because of the requirements of the MPSUD? Yes. And which particular policy are you referring to there?
Policy 1A little 1 in particular.
1A little 1. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. My last question relates to your Appendix A. Is that Appendix A relief the same as the relief in the submission by Red Spur, or has it been expanded?
It's been refined, should we say? I think the relief in the submission as lodged was fairly general.
Yes.
And this is partly in response to reading the officer's report.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's refined. I would say it's refined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There weren't the relief I sought didn't include a lot of detail on the actual wording changes that we thought would give effect to the submission.
Okay.
Whereas we sort of worked on it a bit more in light of the officer's report.
It's always a struggle for the officers, isn't it? So if we're chasing our tail, but we have asked the officers to consider all of the additional evidence and come back to us with their views on their recommended changes, to see whether they would like to update their recommendations.
Okay.
So they can look at this. But are you satisfied that the suggested wording changes in Appendix A fall within the gambit of what Redspur has asked for?
Yes, absolutely.
Are they fairly on point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I've hogged the table these times. Any other questions from Grant?
I'll go first. Yeah, just seeking clarification on this plan that's on the screen. What you're saying is that the beige colour is currently approved,
Yes.
and the red dashed lines are the approved roading network within that beige area. Is that right?
No, there isn't an ODP for this area because it's part of the existing urban area. So that's just there to show what the sort of proposal is in terms of the key roads to service the area, and that is how it's being developed.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I understand that. So the yellow areas, just clarifying what's the proposal there? They haven't yet been approved.
No.
And they're the areas that you're wanting us to consider. Is that right?
Yeah, that's for it. It's we wanted the flexibility to ensure that they're either ideally identified on the maps 2 and 4, but if not on the maps 2 and 4, that the wording of the spatial plan gives the flexibility that they can be considered as part of future planning processes. So at the moment, we've got an operative Christchurch City Plan, which is subject to a plan change, which is about intensification. So this will either be put forward by way of a private plan change or even the next district plan reviews. It's not something that's imminent as a proposal, because there's quite a lot of land still developed, but it's something that in the time frame for the spatial plan is a really beneficial thing for both of those subdivisions.
Okay. Fine, that's fine. I understand that. The area in black, what's that? You're looking at the yellow and then you've got the area in black. Is that something additional?
Could we just bring this up a bit so we might be able to read the key, Josephine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the black area is just okay. Can we just go down to the key?
Do you let them?
Yes, no,
You do it.
they're better than us.
No pressure.
Oh, revegetated.
Does the key help area to be revegetated? Is that right?
Yes.
Yep. But clearly, I think it's landform. It's landform related, and that was the point of the other thing, that there are parts, and you'd all be aware of this, there are parts within the zoned area that are physically very difficult to develop. There's a little bit of mitigation there. It's in the head of a gully. Clearly, that road, if there was ever to be one, needs to link those two yellow areas, and it could go through a revegetated area.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand what. So just going back to the dashed red lines. So the proposal is to extend the roading network from the existing Redmond Spur approved area through the yellow area across the area of which has been recognised outstanding natural landscape. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And then connecting up with the next southern, the other yellow area back out to join with Kennedy's Bush Road. Is that right?
Correct.
To get a complete loop out there. I know that you're suggesting, well, you also indicated, it's not clear to me on the legend for map 10 and presumably map 8 as well, the reference to outstanding natural landscape. Because obviously the council's policy at the moment is avoiding use and development that breaks the skyline. And obviously you're suggesting potentially that you're crossing the top of a gully there that will require some kind of treatment and then reinstatement of some bush.
It doesn't break the skyline, which is why I particularly referred to the top of Kitchener's Knoll, which is the highest landscape feature in that area. So it's well below the skyline. It's potentially
so is that
40 metres vertical.
Is that something the officers could just on the key, the legend doesn't actually, it says areas to be protected, but it doesn't actually say in terms of the RMA, and what the outstanding natural landscape status is. Is it a Christchurch City designation or requirement? In which case, where is that referenced?
Okay, so that's a question for staff, Kathy. On map 10, some clarification about where the outstanding natural landscapes. Is that on the plan, or is that something else?
That's right. And I like you, I think how that corresponds to the constraints map, because constraints are providing quite a big focus.
Should we include that in this other work with these other maps? And
well, I think the work's mainly for the officers to clarify.
Yes.
But I'm happy for you to liaise with them to make sure you're on the same page.
Yes. Yeah, we probably should have shown that. That's right. We can fill that detail in.
I'm mindful of the time, team, so we're diving into a bit of detail here, but
the other, your reference also talks about public transport connection. Is there public transport provided to that existing, or will it be provided?
Not at the moment. No,
So
the closest areas are Westmoreland to the east, and Lower Kennedy's Bush Road, Glover's Road, which is Horswell. But what this will achieve is by connecting the two suburbs, and obviously Redmond Spur is quite a lot of development still to occur in the time frame of the spatial plan. This is, I mean, I'm not an expert on bus services, but I would suggest, I mean, Westmoreland has got a bus service. I would suggest that there would be the catchment for the bus service to extend to this area.
So what you're suggesting is that at some point in time, an assessment would have to be made as to whether it's feasible or not to put a bus loop in there.
I don't know whether an assessment would need, but yes, I think you could, if you just look at the size of Westmoreland and compare it to the size of these two combined suburbs, I think that gives you some indicator.
But you've got no information about that yet. So that's something that would need to be considered by.
No, I've no specific information.
Thank you, Grant. Gail, you had a question?
Thank you. Mine is probably really around what Grant was saying about the landscape and the breaking the skyline. And so I was just wondering if we, and looking at also from Horswell Quarry, I think that part, that regeneration is where it's got the stormwater basin down the bottom of it. And I'm just wondering what the intent was, and whether these sorts of developments where you've got, whether I think they'd be visible from the quarry to go right across, because you're intending to go right across that spur, don't you?
Well, I think that would depend on your viewpoint from the quarry, and nothing's invisible from the quarry depending on where you look. The higher you walk up in the quarry areas, and particularly through the other public used tracks across our family land in that area, which is the crocodile mountain bike tracks and walking tracks, yes, various things are visible. And there are areas there in that gully that are zoned for residential development that we will never develop because they're too steep. And this is the whole thrust of what we're trying to do, is to be able to have a more landform shaped opportunity to apply the sensible development and also other mitigative measures. There are other longer term issues, in my view, about, for example, what happens to small portions of rural zone land surrounded by residential, and do you put a few sheep there to graze the grass to stop the grass growing for fire? Do you have to plant it all out? There are a whole lot of land ownership management issues which I think need to be addressed altogether. It's a great challenge. The city has it, people like me have it, and it's something that we just keep on turning our heads to and trying to come up with something that's really pleasant, a nice place to live.
Thank you. I do have to say, I do like that Redmond Spur development. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we'll move on to the next submission, Fiona.
Okay.
Look, in terms of just, we've taken a bit more time on this one just to get our heads around the area and issues. So we'll just have to perhaps move along a bit more quickly.
Yes,
thank you. So you're now talking with Cochrane Premises Limited. We've got an additional statement.
So just to explain, I've got the Cochrane Premises team here.
Welcome.
Sarah, Evelyn, lawyer, Andrew, the project manager, and Rowan from
come up, if one of you would like to come up to the table, you're very welcome. Well, we can, yeah.
So Cochrane Premises own land at 5 Dawson's Road, Templeton, which is a very narrow strip of land between Templeton, just on the Selwyn side of Templeton, and that is identified in that red colour, but the block on the western edge is actually owned by an existing farm machinery operation, so that's a different ownership. And so it's wedged between the state highway and railway line to the north, and for the most part it's within the Christchurch International Airport noise contour. So in the partially operative, I'm sorry, I'm reading from paragraph 5.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
In the partially operative Selwyn plan, it has a rural business precinct overlay on it with an underlying general rural zone. And the provisions of the precinct are subject to appeal, with the appellant seeking some greater flexibility regarding the types of rural-related industry and commercial activity which can establish. So the particular site characteristics are its location with an existing semi-industrial area, so it's opposite Roydon Quarry, and within an area with already substantially developed for rural industrial purposes by way of approved consents, and that's continuing that very narrow strip of land between the State Highway and Mannion Road, I think it's called, going really right up to Rolleston.
Yep.
Oh, there's a lot of approved consents in that strip, and it's next to the motorway interchange. So it's ideally suited for industrial and commercial uses, including those supporting rural-based businesses requiring large areas for land storage, display, and businesses requiring or benefiting from a high-profile location adjoining the state highway. And as I've noted, most of the existing business have been approved by way of resource consents, including the one on the corner, Farm Chief.
Can we just find that corner with the mouse, which were you talking about? It's that one there. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So the green belt. The site appears to be within or in the vicinity of the proposed green belt shown on maps 2 and 14. So I've just identified it with a red star, its location. The green belt is defined in the spatial plan as a planning tool used to maintain areas of green space around urban areas, often acting as a buffer between urban and rural areas, and on map A as an area where there is a dominance of open space for nature, rural production and recreation, And this is not an accurate description of the Greenbelt on maps 2 and 14 in the vicinity of the State Highway, and is of concern given the officer acknowledges that the ability to rezone sites within the Greenbelt for urban residential development would likely be impacted, subject to how the concept is implemented. On the same basis, rezoning for other forms of urban or rural industrial size development would be potentially impacted. The officer report notes that some submissions include alternative proposals for a Greenbelt. Sprouts off, more like a root system, a mix of green wedges and greenways that follow natural features, green fingers, with development built along transport routes, a more targeted strategy of identifying a concentrated network of natural areas and parks with future development at the urban fringe integrated around those natural areas. And others consider that the policy framework could achieve the same outcomes, which does not rely on such a blunt instrument as a Greenbelt, and I completely agree. So the officer report concludes, we recognise the potential benefits and outcomes of a Greenbelt concept, which they could deliver, but agree with submitters that further work is required, including to define the objectives and opportunities of a Greenbelt, how it could work alongside existing planning and development management policies, and the ways in which it will be planned, designed and implemented. And in response, they recommend adding a notation to map 2 and presumably 14, which is that for ecological enhancement and Greenbelt, the dashed lines are an approximate representation of the location of ecological enhancement Greenbelt areas to be further investigated. In my opinion, it's far too premature to include any kind of a Greenbelt on maps 2 and 4. Further work is clearly required to investigate the concept and possible alternatives. This work can be referenced in the spatial plan text, but should not be shown on the maps. And my recommended amendments are to just simply remove the Greenbelts from maps 2 and 4. Going on to broad locations suitable for urban development. The spatial plan does not meet the requirement for future development strategy to spatially identify broad locations in which at least sufficient development capacity for housing and business land will be provided over the long term in both existing and future urban areas. Maps 2 and 14 only show existing urban areas and approved rezonings and is cadastrally based rather than showing broad locations. It continues the RPS policy of applying a firm, immovable metropolitan urban limit, and decisions on private plan changes for rezoning in Selwyn have consistently found that this is in direct conflict with the NPS direction and associated guidance documents. I suggest that the legends for maps 2 and 4 be amended to recognise that other urban greenfield areas will be considered in appropriate circumstances, and the wording there is the same as I put forward for Red Spur, so I won't say any more about that. I note that the Cochrane site is, in my opinion, an appropriate location for business activity, subject to some appropriate access arrangements, because it has frontage to the State Highway and will rely on access of alternative roads in the vicinity. It's highly accessible in terms of the regional transport network, adjacent to major road or rail infrastructure, and in between two major employment and population centres, which is Rolleston and the city, which will be increasingly connected by high-frequency core PT routes over time. Going on to the sufficiency of industrial land. With respect to industrial and commercial land, it needs to be recognised that there are a range of industrial and commercial locations required to meet the specific needs of different types of businesses. For example, businesses requiring large land areas and storage and display, including heavy machinery which can damage sealed surfaces, rather than industrial commercial buildings, and which may not require reticulated services and can be accommodated outside conventional industrial zones. There also needs to be a sufficient land zoned in a range of locations to facilitate a spread of ownership and a competitive land and development market. Whilst at a city region, there may appear to be plenty of capacity, this does not reflect sub-district requirements as required by the NPS. And so, in my opinion, the spatial plan needs to be amended to recognise these aspects of industrial land supply. And going to Appendix A, I've added some additional wording, which I think would assist. So that's sort of the bottom half of the first page of Appendix A, which essentially recognise that as a whole, there may be plenty of capacity, but there needs to be provision at a sub-district level for a range of different types of business needs.
Thank you, Fiona.
Okay.
Josephine, we've got the clock ticking away. Is that for the next, but it still says 6 minutes, but this is for Cochrane. Okay, so we only had 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
So
Okay, good. So
say service consultants, really not adding anything to that one. So
okay, so
gives you a
good.
little bit more
Yeah,
flexibility.
that's fine. So I'll go to questions, please, from the panel.
Just quickly, you've obviously mentioned potential access issues because it's alongside State Highway 1 where NZTA kind of don't like too many crossings into it. Where the hand is, could you just explain where is that hand? What's that development under there?
Oh, sorry, which farm chief? Oh, farm chief.
A farm shed?
Yes.
Farm Chief, I think that's an existing development being approved by reverse consent, is that right?
Yes.
Right. I know years ago I was project coordinator for Canterbury Highway 2000, and there was traditionally the land between the railway line and the road was heavily planted or grazed or whatever. And I'm thinking of your comment about the greenbelt and other potential uses for that land. Obviously, it's now the whole land is in private ownership. The greenbelt opportunity in terms of linkage from along that whole corridor for pedestrians, cyclists, and stuff. Do you think if that was developed for industrial, that there would be sufficient space to allow for some public amenity?
I can't speak for the clients, but I would have thought they'd be open to some kind of conversation along those lines. In principle, yeah. It's the total area is
just under 10 hectares.
Just under 10 hectares.
Right.
Yeah. So in terms of the access, we have delved into that in quite a lot of detail as part of the district plan submission, and agreement was reached with the officers about a suitable solution to that. So that's resolved.
Is the access onto Johns Road?
No.
It's Dawson's.
Dawson's Road.
So it's not directly onto the state highway?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and that's for 5 Dawsons, and then the farm chief, they have existing access onto Curry's Road. So there'll be no direct access onto the state highway.
Okay, so I'm quite confused here. We've got a red sliver that's bounded by Jones Road and State Highway 1.
Yes.
So why can't you get access onto Jones Road for those properties?
Because the railway lines.
Well, the railway line is
The railway
between.
line is the back of the property.
Ah, gotcha. All right. So that's the railway line is running along Jones Road, is it?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
And just the status, you've submitted on this in the Selwyn District Plan review.
Yes.
Decisions are out.
Yep.
And what was your
So it's got a
decision?
rural business precinct overlay,
Yes.
which allows slightly more generous provision for rural industry than in the general rural zone.
Yes.
But it has been appealed largely because the council is taking a very restrictive interpretation of what rural industry is, which actually means that it's not a workable precinct. So that is hopefully we will resolve through mediation.
Okay. But you'd like us to identify this in the spatial plan to give you a leg up. It's pretty much just in terms of it being identified as a particular area.
Absolutely, would be good. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Any other questions, Robbie?
One's been answered, Mr. Chair, with the 10 hectare comment. The other one is the airport. We've had strong submissions from people opposed to the 50, wanting it to go 55. If we were of a mind to recommend the 55, would that affect this property?
Not really. I mean, the location isn't really particularly desirable for residential development. It's wedged between a railway line and a state highway, so it's got a very high ambient noise background anyway. And my understanding is that I think part of it might be within the 55 dBA contour. I'm not 100% sure of that. Yeah. So some kind of industrial use is really the best option for the site, and part of it is already developed for that purpose in any case. But am I correct?
You mean the neighbouring site?
Yeah, you wouldn't want residential.
Oh, you no, we
No.
would never put.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's clear. Thanks for those questions, Robbie. Any other questions, people? No, thank you very much. It's clear to us. Right, we're going to move on to Fiona Ashton, Service Consultants now.
So I don't really propose to say any more about that one. I'll just let it lie. It was really just an overall submission intended to follow in the theme of ensuring the spatial plan is sufficiently flexible to accommodate consideration of meritorious planning proposals through other planning processes in the future. And I've been around for a while, and certainly the current RPS has got some really restrictive policies which have precluded really good proposals that are not really of regional significance, small scale, but very tight interpretations have meant they just haven't been able to get off the ground, because you can't apply for a private plan change to a regional plan, and the district plan has to give effect to the regional plan. And the spatial plan is going to be implemented through the regional plan. So we have to start right at the top with this document, make sure this one is right, because it has significant flow on effects for all the subsequent planning processes. It's really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who is Service Consultants?
Service Consultants is a surveying firm.
Okay.
Yeah, that we do a lot of work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's under their name.
Yeah.
That's clear. Thank you. So shall we move on? Any questions on that? Grant?
Yeah, I do have. When you look at the aerial photograph, the area in pink there is a school, Harewood School. Is that right?
Okay, so I haven't got that submission in front of me. Right. I'm just going to get to the submission itself.
Page on the agenda.
Page 2 of under 321.
Is there an agenda page number right at the bottom? 43. Thank you.
Sorry, I actually recall now that there was a more specific request in there.
This to me seemed like quite a big request in terms of the area in pink with that little notch going up is Harewood Primary School, and the area to the right of that, the green area seems to be largely large sections, large homes, but I can understand where you're going. It's just, what is the Ministry of Education's view about industrialisation surrounding a school?
Yeah, I think really we haven't got to that level of detail in terms of the details of the concept, and that would that we could consult with them, obviously. There's lots of mitigation you can put along boundaries, setbacks, etc., to assist with that. I think the general theme is to ensure, if you didn't put it in as a identified area in the plan, at least the plan was flexible enough that it could be considered in future planning processes. It probably will be dealt with by way of a private plan change at some stage in the future.
Right. Okay, thanks. Yeah, my query was about the catchment of the school in terms of residential focus within that area. Okay, that's all.
Thanks for raising that, Grant, because there is a specific request here, and we've now had that discussion, so thank you. Any other questions? All right, we will move to Miles premises now. Fiona, thanks.
So I am also appearing for Miles Premises, Sarah Evely, and also for Equus Trust, who is the next submitter on the list. And so we're going to present those jointly and hope that that'll be an efficient way to get through it.
Thank you,
So just to briefly introduce the submitters and the sites that they are talking about. The first one, the Miles Premises site, is a well-known and high-profile site near the airport. It's on the corner of the State Highway and Memorial Avenue and backed by Avonhead Road on the backside. So right by the large overbridge as you go into the airport. The second site is owned by Equus Trust, and that is on Hawthornden Road, which is just across Avonhead Road and a little bit further down. Fiona will talk in a little bit more detail about those particular sites. In terms of the submissions, there's two key issues raised. The first is the overarching direction to meet housing capacity through intensification. I spoke to you about that yesterday. So just at a high level, the submitter's evidence is that the intensification approach will not make sufficient provision for standalone dwellings, will not provide sufficient housing capacity in the northwest, will adversely affect housing affordability in competitive land markets, and as a result will not meet the requirements of a future development strategy or the MPSUD.
Sarah, where are you reading from here?
Sorry, I'm not summarised some notes. Yeah, so but that is set out in the part of my submissions. From paragraph 9.
Okay. Okay.
So a more balanced approach which makes some provision for additional greenfield development is required. It is summarising the where to from here in terms of the content of the spatial plan. The general submission is that the spatial plan should acknowledge those aspects of the plan which are currently a work in progress, and that's particularly around housing capacity. Outline how it's expected that those issues would be advanced as we look towards the first review of the plan, and in the meantime not foreclose outcomes which could contribute to achieving a well-functioning urban environment. And the amendments set out in Ms Aston's evidence are directed to achieving those outcomes. Turning secondly to the airport noise contours, which I thought I'd address in a little bit more detail. The evidence of Professor Clark is filed on behalf of Miles and Equus, as well as Ms Perpick's clients that you heard from yesterday. And I understand that we're going to have another attempt to connect to him this afternoon. Just in case that doesn't go to plan, I wanted to highlight that his evidence explains why the CIAL modelling takes unreasonable worst case assumptions that will not eventuate in practice. And the reasons for that include, first, that the modelling predicts noise levels that are expected to eventuate when the airport reaches its theoretical capacity, which is in around 60 years. However, the modelling assumptions are that there'll be no decrease in the noise generated by the aircraft or changes to traffic management practices which relate to the flight paths that are taken. In particular, Dr. Clark expects that in that time, single-aisled aircraft will be at least 5 dB quieter than the current fleet. And second, the outer envelope contour, which is the one promoted by the airport in particular, is a highly conservative scenario. It takes the worst 3 months for each one runway, and then it has some peaking factors and some additional climate change alterations in it. That's a scenario for which there's no known relationship with annoyance. So all the information that we have at the moment that correlates the noise level to a particular level of annoyance is based on yearly exposure to that noise level and not to a 3-monthly exposure.
Sarah, again, are you reading from separate notes or are we?
Yes, I am, sorry, but in my submissions, that is addressed in paragraph 19. I'm happy to make these notes available to you as well, sorry.
That'll be great, thank you, thank you.
Professor Clark considers that as a result of those assumptions, the airport noise contours advanced by the airport now are significantly larger than they should be, and therefore they cover a whole lot more land area in terms of development. He also identifies that most countries have land use planning controls with limits corresponding to 55 dB or higher. It's clear from Professor Clark's evidence that there are challenges to the modelling, which contour should apply, and what management or mitigation measures should apply to enable some development within those contours. My view is, respectfully, this isn't the forum to confirm all those matters which are highly technical and rely on a lot of testing of the evidence. However, it's my submission that as a panel, you could conclude that development within the 50 dBA contour has merit because it's consistent with recognised and routinely applied standards for acceptable exposure to noise. It can be subject to further mitigation, such as acoustic insulation, ventilation, and no complaints covenants, which would further reduce effects. It would enable housing capacity of a type not otherwise provided by the spatial plan in locations most suited to development, having regard to other constraints such as natural hazards. And in providing that housing capacity, it would better achieve the direction contained in the NPSUD. So in those circumstances, the submitters are seeking that the spatial plan, as the document that sits at the top of the planning hierarchy, provides flexibility to enable consideration and approval of residential development within the 50 dB, both through the RPS review, which needs to have consideration to what's in the spatial plan, and for other planning processes that might occur in the interim, such as Plan Change 14 in these submitters' case. That's me, and so I will hand over now to Fiona.
Before Fiona starts, we saw that triangle image from Margot and her legal submissions yesterday. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't, but I could probably quickly understand it, even if you just wanted to explain to me what it showed.
This is pretty important, so I'd like to perhaps team go back and find Margot's submissions from yesterday with that.
Just look for it now.
Yeah, it's a process triangle, so we'll just get it up.
Oh, actually, I have seen that in terms of like the hierarchy of the planning documents, and where the spatial plan sits in that, and it's need to be considered in all the subsequent documents. Sorry, yes, I have seen that one.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is, Margot had the spatial plan underneath the acts, whatever they turned out to be, and it was, she actually had it in italics because she was talking to us about, it's not exactly clear where the spatial plan fits into the decision-making hierarchy. So,
and I think there, I haven't looked in detail at that part of her submissions, but there is a difference, I guess, in the requirements in terms of having regard to a spatial plan or giving effect to national policy statements and regional policy statements as you filter down. So the direction to decision makers is different.
Yes, and that's what we've heard from the staff team as well. So looks like, are we close to finding it?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you'd seen it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. So we've had your position. I wanted to ask you about, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, perhaps if it could be brought up on the screen, I'm happy to have a quick look at that. Yes. Or if there's some papers left over from yesterday, while Fiona speaks to you.
Okay, thank you. Fiona, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly go to the executive summary in this case of my evidence. So I think
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we've got two reports, the same reference numbers. Which one are we looking at here?
So we've got evidence for Mild. This is evidence for Mild Premises and Equus Trust. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. It was a submission, and then there was evidence.
Okay, so you're looking at the evidence.
The evidence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah, that's the, yeah.
So paragraph 6 is the executive summary. The first paragraph just explains where the two sites are. Basically, the Miles site is currently zoned industrial park, Memorial Avenue, and the Hawthornden land is urban rural fringe. Both blocks immediately, well, Miles is within the urban boundary and the Hawthornden block immediately adjoins it, and both are affected by the operative 50 dBA contour. And Miles wishes to develop a portion of their land for residential purposes, and that's the portion of the land, the Avonhead Road side of the land, and the land fronting onto Memorial Avenue. They wish to retain the industrial park zoning on that land.
Can we go back to that coloured diagram, just so there's pinks and there's dashed areas and stuff like that. Just want absolutely clear what you're talking about.
Okay, so team, just to be clear, Sarah's now got a copy of this diagram.
Yeah, thank you. I've looked at that. Thank you.
So we can go, you're looking to...
That map that was just up there before with the coloured map and stuff.
Yes. The one there.
Yeah, you're referring to Miles premises and Equus Trust and the Industrial Park Memorial Avenue.
Yes.
Which one's which?
Sure. Okay. So, I'll just use that. So this pink here is the industrial park zone, and Miles owns all of that, apart from largely that little corner which has got the hatching over it, which is another party. And to the city side, that is a travellers accommodation, which is the Commodore Hotel. So this is on the corner of Memorial Avenue and Russley Road. And basically, Miles proposed to retain residential industrial park zoning over this portion here, closest to the Memorial Avenue, and it's this portion here, Avonhead Road portion, where they are seeking residential zoning, and they've sought that through the Plans Change 14 process. So there's a submission on that currently being considered. The hearing for that's on the 15th of November. So that's the Miles site, and if it's possible to bring up the...
I can probably scroll for you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't do that.
Well, no, you can't.
Are we in your evidence? Or...
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. So
is this it here, Fiona?
here we go. This is the site. The Hawthornden Road site is this one here. And to the north of that, you can see Avonhead Road there. And going up here, I think sort of the Memorial Avenue site is just further up. So that's Memorial Avenue. It's the orange. Sorry, a bit confusing because this is different planning maps. It's got different coloured for the zones. But orange in this case is industrial park, and red is existing residential zoning. This funny circular line is because that follows the current 50 dBA noise contour, and that's a retirement village which has got a funny boundary because of the 50 dBA noise contour. Okay. And this is the airport special purposes zone. This is all airport on the other side of Russley Road.
So the green area within which the red lines have been identified is currently rural.
Yeah, it's currently general. It's currently rural urban fringe.
Okay.
Yeah. So paragraph 10, both sites easily meet all the criteria in the NPS for a well-functioning urban environment. Residential development here will help meet the existing shortfall of greenfield housing capacity in northwest Christchurch and for standalone housing. It will enable business and residential development in a highly accessible location, close to major employment hubs, including the airport and the central city, and well serviced by public transport. Support competitive land and development markets by providing a greenfield residential development opportunity in a part of the city where demand is high. Contribute to reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in comparison to more distant, less well-connected locations, and not be subject to the natural hazard risks which affect many other parts of the city and will become more significant over time. Paragraph 8, that's a repeat of what I've said for Red Spur, so I won't say it again. Likewise, paragraph 9, just saying why I don't support the compact city approach. And 10, I say that amendments are required to the draft plan to ensure that it meets the requirements of the future development strategy under the NPS, including enabling consideration of suitable greenfield growth to meet housing needs of the Greater Christchurch area. Those are principally, in terms of strategic infrastructure, recognition that the operative airport noise contours on map 9 are subject to review as part of the regional policy statement review or other planning processes, such as Plan Change 14 to the Christchurch District Plan, where in that case, where there is a need for a more urgent response to meet local housing capacity needs, as is the case with Northwest Christchurch. And in my in the full submission, I refer to the evidence that was being presented for Plan Change 14 about the shortage of supply in Northwest Christchurch. Evidence prepared by JAL and also by Mr. Mike Blackburn. So maps 2 and 4, again adding to the legend.
14.
Sorry?
2 and 14.
Yes, sorry, maps 2 and 14. Again, adding to the legend to make provision for new or expanded residential and business development outside the existing urban area and approve plan changes in appropriate circumstances. And I've been through the wording, it's the same as for Red Spur, essentially. Likewise, same wording for housing capacity assessments in Table 2. And likewise, clarification about the draft plan spatial criteria for residential intensification and for future greenfield development, which are required to ensure consistency with the NPS UD.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you so much for pulling that together into a very clear executive summary. It's great practice for us to have that in front of us, along with the full evidence. So I'll go to questions from the panel for Fiona. Grant?
Just a quick question back to that figure 1 plan of the Miles property. I know I have seen aircraft coming in across that bit of land before, and on the map 5, it shows a very thin paint area going in the east-west kind of direction. And I just wondered what is, if aircraft are coming in low there, it's not I'd like officers to just explain or find out for me, is there another issue in the constraints around the airport that are not related to decibel, but are they related to safety in terms of an approaching aircraft across some kind of built structures?
I think we'd better bring up map 5 so you can target the question and the response.
We can probably address that in part now. So the black hatching on that previous map is the runway in protection area. It largely covers the neighbouring property. The very tip of it does touch on the Miles land, but it's generally located over the neighbouring property.
I think
if you bring up map,
the runway,
the
runway is actually at right angles to that long edge of that hatched area, so that the planes come into the runway, into the northwest runway in a northwest wind condition, at absolute right angles to that long line that you can see of that hatched area.
In that way.
Yep, correct.
Map 5 would be good if we could bring that map.
So can we go back to map 5, team? Thank you.
And you'll see that long stretch going from Christchurch Central City across to the little airplane that's on that thing. that bit of land, it's just confirmation of where that is, what's the width of it, and what's the purpose of it.
So that's a question for the officers to answer.
Okay.
And recognising that this map 5 picks up the current laws contour boundaries in the current RPS. Yes. Thank you, Grant. Any other questions, panel? Kate?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You referred just now to 2 supporting documents around your views on compact city, and in particular the impact of supply on values and I think you've called it escalation in land and house prices. Are you able to give those two references to us for, you mentioned Mike Blackburn and one other document?
Yes, it's in the submission, which is up at the moment.
Okay.
That's the evidence that we've filed for plan change 14, so we can make the documents themselves available.
Yeah.
Well,
That's but we can look the documents up if you've got the
Yes.
reference. So just concluding, are you particularly basing your views on the compact city on the supply and demand ratio without regard to other factors, or is it one of a number of factors that you believe?
It's one of a number of factors. I mean, I don't think that the approach that's been adopted meets the NPSUD requirements, because it's really focusing future growth largely through intensification, which is medium and high density housing, and that doesn't meet policy 1A of the NPSUD, which requires meeting housing needs for in a variety of price points, locations, and specifically in terms of the implementation clauses, you have to meet provision for standalone housing as well as other forms of housing. So I think there's a problem in terms of meeting the NPSUD. And also it only looks at housing capacity assessment at a district-wide level, whereas there are clearly shortages at a sub-district level, which need to be met. And the NPSUD particularly requires you to have regard to areas where there's high demand, which is certainly the case in Northwest Christchurch. And I've been very involved in hearings in Selwyn District and rezoning applications there, and the shortage of supply has contributed to the house price escalation situation that we've had. I mean, there's been obviously other factors going on too, and then that will continue if we don't make provision for what people actually want in terms of just concentrating development along the core transport routes at high densities isn't going to meet the range of housing needs and wants that people have. And also, I mean, I have looked at some of the background documents prepared for evidence for Plan Change 14, and there's a lot of criticism of the feasibility of that high density development, which is relied on really to support the business case for MRT. And I think there's one that says really the only places where it's possibly feasible are the inner suburbs adjoining the city centre, sort of the Fendleton and Lower Riccarton. That's about it, where it's currently feasible. I've also looked at the evidence for Mr. Fraser Colgrave has done for Infinity, which raises a lot of concerns about the methodology undertaken for the housing capacity assessment. So I'm worried that they maybe are problematic and shouldn't be relied on. And he's very helpfully, I think, a good review of those and made some. I think it's really important that they have been reviewed in that way. But then in terms of the benefits of intensification, there's a lot of talk about, is this appropriate to assist with a more sustainable city, greenhouse gas reduction, emissions reductions? But the council's own evidence is that actually the different city form options, compact, dispersed or consolidated, actually really don't make a lot of difference in terms of greenhouse gas emission reductions. And that's really because we've already got a city and the current urban form is already baked in, and you can't really try and push it into being something which it's not, in my view. And so there's a high risk. And also there's the MRT, there's no business case for it. And so relying on a proposal and a whole urban growth strategy on something for which there is a high level of uncertainty as to whether it will ever happen is, in my view, not desirable. And also it's improving the accessibility for a few people along those key networks, not for the city as a whole. And we're looking at a city where the projections are that probably 80% of vehicles will be hybrid or electric by 2050. So there are other ways of getting around a city which are also sustainable going forward. So those are all, so there's a lot of, I've done quite a bit of thinking about it. And I'm not saying that MRT is suddenly bad, but I have some problems with it.
I'll stop you there.
Yes.
Like, that's a long answer.
Oh, sorry, I know.
To quite a specific question where you
apologies.
You covered a whole lot of different elements. Kate, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Because I do have some specific follow-up.
Sorry, yes.
Yes. Certainly, you'd agree that there is an interim business case prepared for the MRT?
Yes.
Okay. So
I mean, I haven't looked at the detail of it, to be frank.
You said that there's no business case.
Right.
That's not right, is it? There's an interim.
And I think there's no approved business case, as I understand it.
Okay. Our advice is that there's an interim business case being completed.
Right.
And there's a detailed business case underway.
Okay.
So, yes, I just wanted to clarify that, and officers have given us that opinion. Can you please look at paragraph 11 of Sarah's legal submissions, Fiona? I want to take you to page 3, and I want to specifically look at 11B. Can you see that there?
Yes.
So Sarah's told us that the FDS must also spatially identify, and it's particularly around that point 1, broad locations developments providing over the long term in both existing and future urban areas. So firstly, you agree with that's the direction in the NPS?
Yes.
Yes. And what is your opinion? Does the spatial plan meet that requirement?
No.
Okay, thank you. And I think that summarises your evidence we've heard in your other statements as well. All right. So look, thank you. Any other questions for Fiona? Because I have a couple of follow-ups with Sarah. No? So Sarah, you've had a look at the green
I have, yes.
triangle. Any comments to us?
No, my position is, as I set out before, so that's where I think it sits in the hierarchy, but agree that it's a have regard to requirement rather than a give effect to. Yes. I think the concern for a lot of submitters is what sits in the development strategy will quickly get cemented into the RPS within the space of a couple of years. And at that point, it's a give effect to with no ability for individual members of the public to seek change. Yeah.
So would your advice be we need to be quite careful with the wording?
Absolutely.
Of the spatial plan, because there is a RPS process which will be a formal Schedule 1 process under the RMA upcoming? That's
right. And before we get to any review of the current spatial plan.
And the spatial plan, I think, will be reviewed every 3 to 6 years. So
yeah, that's the
there's going to be an ongoing, what I call a billy goat gruff planning process. There's always a bigger plan coming along, isn't there? So yes, so your advice on that is important. Right, the second question I have is about John Paul and his evidence.
Yes.
What's being arranged? Do you know?
Now I received an email from Margot last night, which suggested that she was going to try and arrange to have him here around, I think it's 2:40 this afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand that he is going to relocate to somewhere with much better internet connection, and hope that that does the trick.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Sarah or Fiona? Thank you very much for your attendance and your submissions and evidence. We'll now move to Phil DeJoux and Crystal Linky. Are you here? Peace.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well done. My apologies.
Welcome both. And the floor is yours.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Phil DeJoux. I'm Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Littleton Port Company. Joining me today is Dr. Crystal Linky, who's our Head of Environment and Sustainability. I'd like to start today with a correction and an apology for an aspect of LPC's written submission. In our comments on page 10, in regard to maps 6, 8 and 10, we stated in poorly expressed language that we sought to be excluded from the maps. This was not our intention, and it was included due to...
Can we just hold and we'll find that submission?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. It's on our agenda, submission 332. Do we have a page, team? Agenda page? Oh, okay. $65 on our agenda. Right, thank you. So I just want to note on the agenda where you're making this correction, Bill.
Yep. So it's page 10 on our version. So
It's in the maps section.
it's in the end.
The appendices.
The appendices.
Okay. Page 10, we've got there now. Oh, I have.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So page.
I think that's page 1. Can we just scroll down a bit? We can't see the page numbers with the. So is it the top?
No, it's in relation to
Yes.
the maps. So keep going down.
I'm going down.
There you go. Top of the page there.
Okay. So what change would you like to make?
So that very top paragraph there.
Okay, so you're withdrawing that.
I'm withdrawing that.
Thank you.
So it was not our intention, and it was included due to errors in reviewing the documents, for which I take personal responsibility. The comments in the submission have caused hurt, and LPC wishes to acknowledge and apologise for that. LPC supports map 6 as it is in the draft spatial plan and does not seek any changes. In relation to map 8 and 10, LPC does believe it is important to acknowledge that strategic infrastructure may need to operate and develop in these locations, but this was not expressed in the appropriate manner, and we do not seek exclusion from those maps. I'm happy to provide this advice in writing after the hearing.
Thank you. I think that would be good if you could just write into the Secretariat with that. That makes it nice and clear. Thank you.
Okay. LPC operates 3 key strategic infrastructure assets in the Greater Christchurch area: the Port of Littleton, City Depot in Woolston, and Midland Port in Rolleston. Collectively, these assets contribute significantly to the social and economic success of the region, primarily through the distribution of goods. LPC is the largest port by container volume in the South Island and sits at the nexus of a key supply chain. We're the heart of a growing hub and spoke model, with cargo arriving via both coastal shipping and rail for transshipment to larger vessels for international export. Our services are critical to the success of a diverse range of exporters and importers, and consequently the lifestyle and prosperity of all people living in the South Island. The port supports thousands of jobs and the creation of billions of dollars of value for the region. LPC has a natural two-way flow of imports and exports and is the hub for imports into the South Island, handling almost 70% of all imports by value. We are the third largest container terminal in New Zealand and a key part of the national supply chain. LPC's submission outlines the activities that occur at each of the sites. In summary, Lyttelton Port is by far the most significant port in the South Island in terms of total tonnage of cargo, number of containers handled, and the value of both exports and imports. It is also New Zealand's third largest container terminal, and LPC has witnessed considerable growth in trade through Lyttelton Port, which is forecast to continue. LPC is investing in additional projects to ensure that it can accommodate this growth into the future. City Depot has a direct connection with the container terminal at Lyttelton Port and has good access to the state highway and rail networks. Midland Port provides for, among other things, the receipt, storage, packing and unloading of import and export containers. It's essentially a gating in point for cargo, particularly from mid-Canterbury into the port. Both inland ports are integral and integrated components of LPC's infrastructure and help to mitigate operational constraints at Lyttelton Port. They are also critical to the continued decarbonisation of the supply chain through the modal shift of containers from road to rail. It is also important to highlight the role that LPC's infrastructure plays in the freight network for Greater Christchurch and beyond. Due to the topographical barrier of the Port Hills for road and rail access to Lyttelton Port, the existing freight network connections are of critical importance. LPC understands that the spatial plan establishes the high-level direction that will feed into planning instruments that directly influence LPC's operations. The spatial plan is therefore a critical planning document for LPC. LPC is generally supportive of the draft spatial plan, and it also supports changes that are recommended by the reporting officers to the extent that they reflect LPC's submission. However, LPC considers that further changes are required to ensure that the port infrastructure and associated freight network is acknowledged appropriately. This is particularly important with the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement review upcoming. Firstly, LPC supports the officer's recommendation to amend MAP 15 and include key freight routes as outlined in the image contained in LPC's submission. However, LPC considers that MAP 2 should identify the freight routes and public transport routes to and from Lyttelton. Although this map is intended to be high level, these routes are critical to the effective and efficient operation of the transport network for Greater Christchurch. MAP 9 should identify the major freight transport routes. It already shows the state highway corridor and the rail corridor. And MAP 14 should also identify the major freight network routes. It already shows public transport routes and the proposed mass transit network and the heavy rail line. It is critical that Lyttelton Port and both inland ports are consistently identified on the relevant spatial plan maps and legends. LPC supports the officer's recommendations to amend maps 5, 9, 13 and 15. We would also like to see map 2, which provides a visual representation of the overarching spatial strategy for Christchurch, for Greater Christchurch, show Lyttelton Port and the inland ports. For example, there is a plane to signal the location of Christchurch Airport, and LPC considers that a similar visual representation should be included for port infrastructure, such as included on map 15 for Lyttelton Port. LPC acknowledges and supports the officer's recommendations to amend Direction 2.2 to acknowledge that strategic infrastructure sometimes needs to operate in areas affected by natural hazards. It would be helpful if this was complemented by a notation on the relevant maps. Finally, LPC is concerned about the recommendation to amend the text on page 60 in relation to protecting strategic infrastructure. The officer recommends using carefully managed rather than avoided in relation to urban development around strategic infrastructure. The weakening of this language means there will be situations that require urban development to be avoided in order to ensure that the safe and efficient operation of strategic infrastructure, including port infrastructure. LPC considers that text on page 60 should refer to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. You've read from the prepared statement there.
Yes.
that, can you make that available to the secretary?
Yeah, I can. I'll have to do it later as I've made a few pen adjustments to it.
That's
So
right. And I think that serves to consolidate your withdrawal position. So that's very clear what you've asked for, which is really good. I would like, just for my own purposes, to have a look on the screen at your appendices 2 and following. So, team, that is in our agenda. Can we just get in there now? Yes, this is the first one. So, this is Port Littleton.
Yep.
Yes, and just from is the white land areas of land that the port company actually owns? Is that the reference? Was that a zoning?
Sorry, the white section is the consented reclamation area. So that full area is 32 hectares, I think. At this point, we've built 16, 18,
yes,
16 hectares.
Yes. The white outlined area is what I'm the cadet.
Oh, the white lines? Yes, that's the port. Yes.
The port land.
Yep.
Okay. And I went up with my daughter to have a look at this a few nights ago. So the road across to Sumner and there's a lookout up there, which
Windy Point. It's a great view.
Yeah.
It's also a very cold place at the wrong time.
And the port was fully operational. It was about 8 o'clock. We went up and had a look. So it was a busy place.
Yeah, we're 24/7.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Can we just go to the next image? Thanks, team. So this is the city depot.
Yes.
And this is port-owned land as well?
Yes.
Okay. And this is in terms of State Highway 76. And what's the main road on the other side?
Sorry, which one? The one that goes towards the tannery?
Yes, take the mouse there, that one there.
Chapman's Road.
That's Chapman's Road.
Okay, and the railway line comes through there too?
Yes, and we have a siding into there as well. So we have about 3 or 4 trains a day run from there to the port.
Wow, that is really good. And do you truck from there as well as rail?
The trucking from there tends to be trucking companies picking up empty containers to take to businesses in Christchurch to fill up.
Okay.
So it's essentially an empty container storage and repair facility.
Okay, and the containers are stacked quite high, are they? In terms of...
Yes. Yep.
I know the facility. Yes, thank you. And the next image, please. So this is Midland Port.
Yes, that's at Rolleston.
Okay. Yes, I know that area. We've had a look at that.
Yeah. So that actually has a different function to City Depot. Yes. So that is actually it's a full port. So when a box is delivered, a container is delivered there, it is essentially gated in to the port. It's the same as if you delivered it to the Littleton terminal.
Okay.
And we conglomerate all of those containers that are brought into that site onto trains, and we take them by train into the port.
Okay, so that's train service as well.
Yep. So there's a full length siding in there too.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'll go to questions now, Phil. I think that's the last of the images. These are the 3 sites.
Those are the 3 sites, and I think we included just a map of our network on there as well, which I think the officers
staff have accepted this. Yep. Yes. Okay. So I think Victoria will go to you for a question.
Sure.
Mine's more for the officers. I'm interested in the comments in the submission about the identification of the freight network, but perhaps more particularly the alternative routes.
Yep.
And recognising that they're critical to the resilience of the integrated freight network. Yes. I can't recall reading anything about that in the officers' report. Is it there? Can someone point me to that? It might be there and I just can't remember, but that's something that jumped out at me that I'd like to have a closer look at, please.
Let's just add that to our questions of clarification for the staff. I think, has that been considered and what is the response?
Yeah.
And if not, what is the response? I think is the
I think that's critical.
Yeah. Gail, yes. Yeah.
Kia ora, Phil.
Kia ora, Gail.
I just around the freight lines as well.
Mhm.
I was just wanting some clarification for you. Has the port been involved with the work that the coastal hazards adaptation team have been doing around the peninsula?
It's already probably one for you.
Yep. A little bit. We've started to engage with council on that. We had a first meeting, I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, where they showed us the map of Whakaropo and where the predominant hazards were.
So you've seen that stuff they've done around the Teddington. I'm just thinking of, you've got your Gibbs and Dyers there, but around the other roads that are between Littleton and the base of Gibbs. And because I think it would be really good to get involved, particularly with at the time now where they're looking at what's going to happen with those roads, and that could be a major issue for you guys.
Yeah, and that goes back to the resilience of those other freight networks, particularly going up over to Evans and to Sumner, and then over to Gebby's Pass, and making sure that those are resilient, as well as around Dyer's Pass Road.
Yeah, because there's quite considerable flooding. It happens now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Grant?
Thanks. I was just referring to your suggestion to use the word avoid rather than carefully manage. And I'm kind of, my question's related to the marinas that are there in close proximity, and then the other thing is the proposed repositioning of the ferry that goes from Littleton to Diamond Harbour.
Yep.
If you change the word avoid or put it back in, does that affect the operations of recreational, the marina and the ferry?
No, we own the marina, so that's part of our operations.
Okay.
And equally, all the ferry terminals part of our operations. So repositioning it makes no difference. The ferry terminal currently actually goes into what I would consider a more operationally sensitive area than where it's proposed to be relocated to.
The marina's not shown on this map, is it? On your
maybe
appendix 2 map.
Go back. I'll show you where it is.
Yeah, you can.
So the marina is on the left-hand side of the inner harbour, so just inside the farthest to the left jetty, GD7.
Okay.
So it's just inside there. You can see the 3 arms of it. So all of that is our operation. We built it and we own and operate it.
And the ferry will come into there.
Yeah.
Well.
So I mean, it's still to be designed, but current thinking is that the ferry would come into the corner of where Jetty 7.
Can someone grab the hand? Is it possible for us to do that? I think you've got control. Can you just home in and just show us with the hand? So that's
where Crystal has the hand right now is about where we would probably put the terminal, so for the ferry. So there is there's an existing ramp there that used to be used for roll-on, roll-off cargo, but now that we've built the marina there is no cargo operations that go in on that side of the jetty. And the beauty of that location is the number 8 bus could come in off Sutton Quay onto the Sutton Quay roadway, and we've moved our physical gates now so that we can actually create road access into the marina or the Tiana area from that Sutton Quay side. And the other thing that would happen when that happened is that there's an area of operational space there that we would actually revert back to public access as well. So it would extend that Tiana space.
And presumably the cruise ships and other shipping related to that will all be dealt with through the port company's operations.
Yeah, so cruise vessels, if you look where the hand is now, that is the cruise berth. So cruise ships come in there. There is no, the only access to the cruise berth is via road. So you can't walk in and out of there. So cruise the cruise vessel buses and shuttles go directly from that berth.
Okay. Thank you.
Question of clarification for me, and this will age me. In 1966, my family, we moved from Taranaki to Bluff.
Yep.
And we came down on a ferry, I think it was the Maori,
Yep.
roll on, roll off.
Yep.
Where did that come into? And are those facilities still there?
So if you look where the hand is right now,
Yes.
that was the roll-on, roll-off ramp for the ferry services that ceased in 1976.
Okay.
The ramp is still there.
Yes.
It is not in a functional state. And yeah.
Yeah. We're looking out 30 plus years here.
Yep.
Is that opportunity still able to be serviced in the future? Was ever reinstated, or?
I think the challenge would be space. So if you think about Picton and the way they marshal all the vehicles to go aboard the ferries, it takes up an enormous amount of space.
And they're redeveloping there, aren't they? at Picton?
They are. So they're building new terminals both in Picton and in Wellington for the new it's the IREX project.
Yes.
So they're having to be built because the new ferries are dramatically larger.
Larger.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. But it's probably never say never, but at the moment it would be.
It would be very difficult to accommodate. The challenge with Littleton is all of the flat land is reclaimed and there's not very much of it. So space is very much at a premium.
Yes.
And in that inner harbour area, a lot of it is actually owned by Kiwi Rail. So there's about 6 rail lines that if you zoom in, you can kind of see. So that corridor is all owned by Kiwi Rail. So it's quite a wide area of rail line through there. So there's only a single, well, there's a dual carriageway for motor vehicles that runs through there, but it's a very small space.
Okay, thank you. Just checking if there's any final questions. No, I don't think so. Phil and Crystal, thank you so much for coming in. And look, in terms of the retraction of that part of the submission, that's all fine. Just make it clear, and really appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Sorry,
I do have a clarification question around the alternative routes.
Yes.
Acknowledge that it's requested in the submission, but we don't actually have a spatial identification of them.
Could you supply us a plan that could be used to put them on the planning maps that you're asking for?
Yep, we can do that.
Just in a GIS format or whatever is going to be helpful for the team.
Yep, we can do that.
I think that will be good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take a short break of probably just a 5-minute comfort stop. We'll be back at 11 o'clock. Thank you.